Hi, so yeah, as you can see, I'm Philip Roberts. And normally I'm a Rails and JavaScript developer, as well as the co-founder of a small web startup here in Edinburgh called Float. We do cash flow forecasting for small businesses. But today I want to tell you a story. And that's a story about a game that I built at a recent Hack Weekend, together with Jim, who's speaking later, and a couple of other guys. And this game is interesting for a few reasons. So the first was that it was built in 16 hours by 3 of us, starting about 10 o'clock after cocktails, finishing about 6 p.m. the next day. So kind of some interesting stories to share about that with you. Second reason it was interesting, it was built using WEBSOCKETS, which Peter did a quick introduction to. So I want to share kind of an introduction to WEBSOCKETS and show you how that influenced how we built the game. And finally, the interesting thing about this game is that it's not it's a multiplayer game, first of all, and it's not online, everyone hunkered down behind their computers. It's actually built around people who are in the same room as each other using kind of modern technology to interact. And the kind of basis for that is Shakespeare, so I'll come to that in a minute. So before I go any further, credit where credit's due. The two handsome men on the screen are Jim and Rory. They were the other two technical people on the team. And the lovely lady in the middle is Padmini, who is our kind of resident Shakespeare expert and dealt with a lot of the artwork. So to give you some background, we built the game at an event called Culture Hack Scotland. So Culture Hack is a hack weekend, but unlike many of the common hack weekends, it's not about trying to build a startup in 48 hours or kind of come to any kind of real conclusion. It's just about trying to create beautiful, interesting, or creative things. And the focus of that is using cultural data. So it's getting a room of developers and designers together with cultural organizations from Scotland who have opened up their data. So, for example, some of the data this year was kind of typical things like the entire festival listing for the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So that's events, start times, end times, prices, descriptions of events, through to slightly more esoteric things like the power consumption of 4 of Edinburgh University's buildings every half an hour for an entire year in a humongous CSV file. So it's kind of a range of data sets and just given to a room full of designers and developers and say, hey, what cool stuff can you make to show these cultural organizations the benefits of opening up their data? So I've been to loads of hack weekends, and Culture Hack Scotland is by far my favorite just because it is so creative and lets just people kind of run free with this random sets of data and see what they can create. So the data set that caught our eye at the weekend was a fully marked up XML copy of Shakespeare's Macbeth. So it had, for every single line said in the play, it had who said it, where it was said, what scene it was in, what act it was in. So you could kind of take that and parse it with a computer and then try and do something interesting with it. So the concept that we came up with was a game that we called Shaky, or as you can see, a massively multiplayer Shakespeare recital with virtual tomatoes and fart sounds all over WebSockets. So that's kind of the description. But ultimately, it's a way of getting a large group of people like this one interacting each other via a public performance of Shakespeare's Macbeth, but doing it in a slightly more modern way than a traditional theater, using mobile phones and WebSockets. So to kind of give you, we'll hopefully have a shot of the game later on if the Wi-Fi is working properly. But to give you kind of an introduction before we go any further, here's a photograph of the game in action. So we've got 4 people on the right-hand side who are playing the game, and behind them is a projector screen. I should not look up there because you can't hear me. So people log into the game by using their mobile phones, and then you'll see up here we've got the 4 actors who are going to act out the play, and then below is the audience, so the other audience members in the room are all logged in using their phones. And then over WebSockets, each of the actors will receive, in order, the lines they have to say during the play. Meanwhile, the audience members can vote on whether the actors are doing a good job by throwing virtual tomatoes or bunches of flowers with associated sound effects. So that's kind of a quick introduction to the game. Here's kind of a close-up of the 2 screens. So the big screen running on the projector shows the Shakespearean theater, and then you can see down here the options to throw tomatoes or throw bunches of flowers. So that's a very quick introduction to the game. Hopefully we can have a shot a bit later. But the core technology of our game was WebSockets, so I want to take you through an introduction to how those work if you haven't seen them before. So WebSockets are a fairly new technology. They're still kind of a work in progress, but you can sort of use them in most of the latest versions of all the browsers. And they effectively allow real-time communication between servers and browsers, and vice versa. So it's no request-response cycle, it's not over AJAX, it's instant communication. So kind of a simple concept, but they allow us to do some pretty powerful things. And we actually built our game using a service called Pusher. So Pusher is, we've actually got a Pusher guy in the audience. Pusher does a few things sort of on top of WebSockets that make them a bit more useful and a bit more powerful. So the first is it's a scaled and hosted service, so you don't have to worry about running your own WebSocket server. Papers over some of the sort of rough edges in this sort of specs and browser support, providing fallbacks if your customers are using browsers that don't currently support WebSockets. And they also implement sort of a simple messaging service on top of WebSockets that I'll come to in a minute. So if you're there already, great. If you have a phone or a computer that's connected and want to join in this kind of interactive demo, go to bit.ly/websocks. You should get just a completely blank white screen. And if you can kind of, I don't know, raise your hand or something once you've got in, and I can see that a bunch of you are in. Okay, that's cool. So you'll have a blank screen at the moment, and this is the entirety of the code that's currently running on your screen. So first of all, we're downloading Pusher's client library. Pretty simple. And then this is the entirety of the JavaScript that's running. So first of all, we set up a connection to Pusher using my API key. And then we create a channel, or subscribe to a channel in Pusher. So a channel is effectively a sort of named communication channel, as it were, between the browser and the server. In this simple example, we're just going to have one channel, but if you had a big application, you might want multiple ones to separate different data. And then, pretty simple, we bind to events on that channel. This event's going to be called message, and then do something with the data. So here I'm just going to append it to your screen. So if I can get at this, I can show you the server side. So for anyone who doesn't have their phone running, this should run the same, should show the same result. So if I should in here. So that was the client side of a Pusher connection that I just showed you running in your phones. This is the server side. This is an example running in Node. Pretty much the same. Set up a connection to Pusher up here, subscribe to the chat room channel again, and then this side we're going to trigger an event. So we're going to send an event from my server to hopefully all of your phones kind of in real time using this content data that I'm going to pass in from the command line. So if I do node server hi there, then you should see immediately popping up on your phone, hopefully. Yay? No? Yay! So, pretty simple example. But we effectively have a one-way chat, as it were. It's kind of a dictatorship, I suppose. So, super simple example, but I think it shows you kind of the power of what's going on. So there's no request-response cycles. This isn't AJAX long polling or anything. This is instantly just sending events from my server to your phones. So yeah, simple but pretty powerful. And with Pusher and a bit of wrangling, you can actually convince it to send events directly from two browsers. So we could have it sending from someone here's browser, like phone to someone else's. And that's kind of how we built the core of our game. So I don't want to take you through a whole host of WebSockets examples because you can do that in your own time. But I kind of want to show you how we built the game and how WebSockets influenced the way we built it. So here's the very simple basic architecture of the game. So we don't really have any servers involved. There is a Rails app, but it's pretty much just sending HTML and JavaScript to either the projector or the phones. But once that's happened, everything just runs through Pusher. So the game server is the canonical place where the game happens. So that holds all the game state, all the players register into the game server. That's what's running on the projector. And then the players, you guys, would interact with the game using the game clients, which is what's running on the phone. And all that communication is done by a pusher. So the first thing we did to develop the game was to split into teams. So Jim worked on the mobile phone application, and Rory and I worked on the game server running the projector. So having done that, we thought, right, what do we need to do? We need to figure out, get our heads around what we're actually going to be building, because we had this loose concept of some kind of weird Macbeth parlor game. So the first thing we did was to, literally, we were in a room of whiteboard and blackboard walls, which is pretty cool, and just sketched on the walls the kind of mock-ups of how we expected the application to work. So players are going to go on their phone, they're going to register with their Twitter handle, and they're going to get a screen that says you can throw tomatoes or do whatever. So we created the mock-ups of how we expected the game to work, and then we realized that we kind of needed to extract from that all these sort of named events that we're going to be going through pusher. So, for example, player register as an event would register a player into the game using their name. Player deliver would send the lines that they had to say out to the correct player, or in this case, player hurl. So John here would be hurling a tomato because he didn't think the current player was doing a very good job. So for me, I think this was kind of a key step in developing the game. It was at this point we all got on the same page about what events we were going to be supporting, how the game was going to work. We also defined a common language for our game. So do players act lines? Do they deliver lines? Do they say lines? Do players throw tomatoes, hurl them, chuck them? That sounds like semantics, but it's kind of important when you're working in a small team in 16 hours trying to build something very quickly to all be sort of definitely on the same page. So having done that, Rory and I focused on the game server. So game server is just a JavaScript application. We build it in Backbone and CoffeeScript. I won't go too deeply into the code, but what was interesting was that the game server responded to almost no DOM events at all. So normally when you're building JavaScript applications, you've got, user clicked on this button and respond to that event, or user filled in this form field. But here it was only responding to one user interaction, and that was game start. Everything else that was responding to was coming via pusher, so pusher events like player register. But interestingly, that didn't actually change very much of how the game was built. We're used to responding to events, just normally they're user interaction events, not pusher events. So it didn't really change too much how we built the game, which I kind of thought was interesting. Similar story, I think, for Jim, building the game clients running on the phones. Again, he built it in Backbone, but this time native JavaScript, just because that's what he knew. They didn't really have to store any game state, because that was all done by the game server running on the projector. So it was effectively just a conduit between the users interacting with the game. So either the game client was taking user interactions, like throw a tomato, and converting it to an app-specific event over pusher, like player hurl tomato. Or it was receiving events from the game server, like show the user the words, and then updating the DOM on the screen to show them the words. So that's kind of a quick whistle-stop through the game. As I say, I'll show you in a minute. But I want to share some learnings that I took away from building this game in such a short space of time, and kind of what I'm hoping to take back to my day job, as it were. So the first was that the game and the architecture became very modular, and that wasn't necessarily intentional. It was just kind of the way it evolved. And I think that was due to the fact that we were communicating via pusher, which is quite a narrow channel. You can just say, here's the name of an event, and here's some data. So things become very separated. And as an example, it didn't matter at all that Jim had built his in JavaScript and Rory and I had built our part of the application in CoffeeScript. In fact, we could have built them in completely different frameworks, and that wouldn't have mattered at all because pusher provides that communication channel. So the application became very modular, even though we didn't necessarily intend it. And for me, that had a bigger learning, and this is kind of around event-driven design or event-driven development. So my day job is, at the moment, I'm effectively taking a big Rails application built in the traditional way. Server creates some HTML, sends it to the browser, and then you have a pile of jQuery spaghetti on top trying to do fun stuff to make it interactive. And I'm taking that and converting it into a client-side heavy JavaScript application. So doing all the logic in Backbone, very stateful in the client. And I've learned about event-driven habits and event-driven development, but when you're coming from a very procedural background like Rails, it's kind of hard to get into that way of thinking if you're not used to it. But here we had to have an event-driven approach. Pusher was our event-driven channel by which the whole application worked. So we literally had to have events written on the wall. We were talking about events the whole weekend. And so that shaped kind of how we built the game and demonstrated to me the power of event-driven development. And that's something that I will definitely be taking back to my day job. As an example, down the side of the screen during the game is an event feed that just says, John threw a tomato, someone else registered. And that was kind of a last-minute addition that we threw in just at the end to kind of make it a bit more interesting. And it doesn't have any comprehension of the rest of the application at all. It's just sitting, listening to the event feed that's going, player registered, player threw a tomato, and just using that information to create that sort of dynamic list, and completely separate from the rest of the application. So that leads into kind of a final benefit for me, and that's just the power of having sort of the events listed on the wall, as it were. So within about 20 minutes of starting developing the game, all three of us had a mutual understanding of what was the language we were using, what were we building, how was it all going to interact. And I think that kind of bred from this concept that we had the events as the core of the application. And I found that has hooked in quite nicely to some of the discussion I've been seeing, particularly in the Ruby community, about this concept that your applications, the interesting part of your applications isn't so much the data objects involved, although that's what we tend to focus on, users, players, objects. But where it gets interesting is actually the messages that are being passed between those objects. And by Pusher kind of forcing us to put those at the core, very quickly focused on what we were building and why. So that's pretty much me. I want to leave you with a future medical condition that I think is going to plague most real-time developers in the future. And that is, I'm going to coin WebSocket madness. WebSockets are incredibly mind-bending. Suddenly, you don't have your typical request-response cycle. You don't have development environments that are distinct from each other, because all of a sudden they're connected to each other via Pusher, which you don't have any control over. So as we're there at 8 in the morning thinking, right, okay, got like 8 hours to finish this game. Okay, I'm just going to fire up my development server. I'm just going to figure out where I was at, and I think I understand what's going on. And all of a sudden, the game starts, and people are registering, and you're thinking, I haven't even done anything yet. This is mental. Until you realize that Jim and Rory are all trying to do the same, but suddenly our development environments are all connected to each other. Very, very confusing. Anyway, that's me. That talk is all fine and well, but if the game isn't any fun, it kind of doesn't mean anything. So I know as developers, we're maybe not all born and bred actors, but I'd like to give it a shot, if you're up for it. So if you go on your phone to, let me get this up first. Okay, so if you go to, well, it's easier, I think, if you go to bit.ly/, there you go. So yeah, if you go to bit.ly/shakyapp, you should get a little screen. I could bring up on here to show you. Yeah, so if you enter your Twitter username, it's not actually going to authenticate to your Twitter account, so don't worry about that. It's just going to grab your avatar to put you on the screen. So if you do that and hit join, we should, with a bit of luck, start to see people popping up in here. Yay. If you'd already gone in before I refreshed everything, you might want to start again. if you don't see yourself on the list. And hopefully this demo will go better than the demo did at Culture Hack, where my Chrome browser suddenly had a very sad face on. Okay, that's probably enough. Okay, so, oh, we can't see, who's this? We don't know. Snunky? Who's Snunky? Okay, whose Twitter avatar is like Snunky? Nobody. Okay, this could be interesting. Oh, wow. Okay, do the other three people know who they are? The cat looks like a runner and someone on their phone. Do you recognize these? Okay, can you stand up if you're one of the four? Okay. Yours says you're in the audience. Oh no. What does yours say? Does yours say who are you playing? Ah, good. And you're playing? Are you playing someone or are you in the audience? Macbeth. Okay. Well, let's start and we'll see if some random people receive things on their phone. So in a second, everyone will be given the option. Please go slightly light on the hammering the tomato button, just so we can maybe get through more than 30 seconds. All right, let's go. So does anyone have words on their screen? And then once you're done, hit the button. All right. And Invisible Macbeth. Oh no. If I could remember the event name, I could trigger it myself. So no one has words on their screen? Yeah, looks like it's Snunky. Okay, well, you get the idea. Where have the sounds gone? Yeah. We have a nice event feed, at least. If only I was posting all this to your Twitter streams, that'd be amazing. Okay, well, there you go. Yeah, should we try again? All right. So you'll need to, you'll probably need to go through that process again. So go back to the kind of original, or just probably refresh that page, it should work. Or bit.ly/shaky app. Okay, stand up if it says you're playing a character this time. Hopefully we'll have 4. Oh. No idea. One more try. All right. He's the Lego Ninja. This is just a good social experiment in Twitter avatars. Who's the Lego Ninja? First witch, go. Okay. Well, at least I hope you get the idea, at least. Okay. Well, that's me. Does anyone have questions, thoughts, inspirations? Silence? Sorry? Yeah? Yeah. Phil.
So within push itself, the message order is guaranteed. But in terms of when you make a call to push, in terms of when you distribute that data, the network's in place, so you rely on that. If you wanted to, we don't offer guarantee messaging, but if you wanted to have like an acknowledgement layer on top of the event and stuff, you could.
Yeah, perfect.
What's the push your price model, or what's the kind of difference?
I don't work for Pusher.
I feel a bit guilty there. I mean, do you want to speak to me afterwards? I don't want to make it push it back.
You get 100,000 messages a day for free. There was a question over here?
Maybe it's sort of push your IT. It might be relevant. I was going to ask, I presume you can't work with push it offline development.
So, I mean, you can write your code in a tested way. So you can open up the browser console and do push it, get the instance, find the channel and trigger an event on it.
Okay.
And there is actually a someone's created something called something. The guy that works for Twilio has created a Ruby app that basically understands push protocols.
So you can run your tests without being tested.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you host your own version of his service.
Okay.
So there's another thing to look into is there's a thing called Socket.io, which is kind of an open source, not hosted equivalent. Very similar kind of setup, but it just runs locally. So. Yeah, so there's encryption support for Pusher to set that up so that it runs over HTTPS. But WebSockets run over port 80, right? Because that's the, or does it still get? Yeah. Yeah. So actually, one thing that Phil raised when we were doing the demo was that 3G networks like to mess around with WebSocket traffic as well. Whereas if you run it over HTTPS, that kind of sorts that out. Yeah. Yeah, so Pusher has some fallbacks, flash fallbacks, which is why it won't run natively on Android, is that right?
Yeah, so Socket.io will fall back to flash fallback support and long fall support as well. Pusher just falls back to flash support at the moment, although we're looking at the base fallback.
Hey. Not anywhere in particular I go to. Because I went last year, and I can't remember how I found out about it last year. Yeah, probably. Yeah, so there's a few meetups in Edinburgh. I don't know if you're in Edinburgh. There's a few in Glasgow as well. So Tech Meetup is one, which is just kind of the tech community. So they're often announced at things like that. I don't think there's a mailing list, but it might be worth just sticking your name on some of the sort of mailing lists for Scottish tech. So there's a Tech Meetup mailing list which you could get on, or like Refresh or the Ruby ones. Because stuff like this tends to get punted out to those lot as well. Yeah, that's true. So Lanyard's a conference and meetup site, so you could register to that for Edinburgh-based events. But if you haven't done a hack weekend kind of event, I would highly recommend it. My first was, Social Innovation Camp in Glasgow, which was about building tech solutions for kind of social issues. I showed up to that with very little experience apart from building a horrible PHP website, and ended up like learning a lot of Rails in a weekend by force. But it's a very good way to kind of get you out of your comfort zone and learn stuff and show you how much you can actually achieve in not a lot of time when you're given the freedom to do that. So strongly recommended. Okay. Oh yeah, that's a good call. Yeah, so there's a thing called Startup Digest, which is a weekly newsletter. There's a Scottish one, there's a London one, there's ones all around the world. So that might be the best place. He sends out a newsletter every week. Yeah? I'm sure the Pusher homepage will tell us. So, do you know of any particularly cool people using it?
Yeah, ITV is Pusher. I mean, the use cases are really simple, like notifications for pushing data through. So we saw that on the right-hand side. But it doesn't have to be farty noises. For an example, it could just be news. So, for instance, if you're watching the Euro 2012 stuff, you have the game on and also news updates about what's going on. So that sort of stuff. But I think what Phil's saying is where this stuff becomes really exciting is the interaction stuff. So having people standing for reading a script, audience participating, the screen itself. I think they're the really innovative and exciting examples. And we're Shake App, the first one that I've really seen that blew my mind. There's a lot of value in using this technology generally for chat, customer support, activity streams. We see it all the time in Facebook and Twitter. But I think we're going to see a lot more innovative and exciting pieces of this stuff.
Yeah. I think it's interesting if you're, like when I first read about WebSockets a while ago, before I'd really used them, the Wikipedia definition is horrendous. It's like, you got a bi-directional full duplex communication over TCP, blah, blah, blah. But it's super simple to use, and particularly with Pusher, like 100,000 messages a day for free. It's worth just having a play and just getting your head around this real-time stuff because it is going to become more common, and you can very quickly do some pretty fun stuff with it. While writing my talk, I got completely distracted into writing a thing where I could change slide using, if you're using like those HTML5 presenter things, like have a thing on my phone to communicate and like change slide. I didn't use it in the end, but you can, there's a lot of kind of cool stuff you can do and not a lot of code just because it is suddenly properly real time. So.
One thing that I did last week, I'm writing an application that audits Rails applications. But what I've done is push basically everything asynchronously. So you send a request to the server, and then it basically queues up lots of the requests, and then updates the browser in real time as each thing is getting through. And what that means is you're getting information straight back from the server as soon as you send that request, and then the information gets more and more rich as time goes on. And so it can then do whatever, sending emails, going up to other servers. That really excited me. My other question was, you normally work with Rails. Obviously, you wrote that in Node. Has working with WebSockets pushed you further towards Node, or would you still be interested in day-to-day using WebSockets in Rails?
Well, what was interesting, so in our game, I mean, that demo was written in Node just because I've got a Ruby one as well. But the game itself was entirely written in the browser, apart from a bit of server-side stuff. To be honest, with something like Pusher, there's like a really nice Ruby gem that makes it easy to send events. I'm not sure because this is like the first real-timey thing I've built. It seems like it wouldn't make much odds, to be honest, unless you're going to try and run your own WebSocket server thing.
Yeah.
But using something like Pusher, it's kind of abstracted away from me. Yeah? Yeah. I'm pretty sure Heroku are working on support so that you could just actually run a WebSocket server on Heroku as part of your app. I know .cloud, I think, already have it. So I suspect as we see it come into play more, we'll have more choice. Yeah, I don't know what the strategy is when pressure goes down, but I guess it depends.
I think I've been working like this real-time technology for 11 years. It's generally called common triple A. And the problem with that was it was so hacky and the server solutions were so difficult to install and configure. But now with WebSockets and even with the standard common stuff, it's a lot easier. Like Socket.io takes about 5 minutes to install another basic example. So the solution that we provide is scale, really, and then hopefully lots of value like tooling and features on top of that. But if you want to host it yourself, you can, and that could be your fallback solution in the 0.2% that would maybe down for the year. I don't know whether we have capacity down that much.
What about our
Yeah, last one.
what about our like semantic web and RESTful services and what about accessibility? Purely web's up to the REST killer.
People build REST APIs on top of WebSockets.
They have that's the yes, that's
Um,
yeah, it's okay, accessibility. I can't see how it's accessible.
I mean, it surely depends what you're building. I don't know how I would build an accessible version of the game. And I couldn't build a RESTful version of the game. So, yeah, like obviously there's a spectrum of what we're building. My view, I guess, is that the more rich, dynamic, real-timey, gamey stuff, like real proper applications rather than sites, it's going to be very, obviously we have to try, but it's going to be very hard to create RESTful things of everything just because it doesn't make sense to have a RESTful Shakespeare parlor game. But, it's a completely valid concern. I don't know, to be honest. I guess that's a debate that's going to rage on for a while. But. Okay, thanks very much.